We keep hearing that AOC, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, Bernie Sanders, Pramila Jayapal, we keep hearing that they're fighting for and they're doing everything they possibly can, everything in their power to get the policies that the left wants and the policies that would be best for the country and get us through this current crisis. We keep hearing that they're fighting for Medicare for all and UBI, monthly recurring payments to everybody in the country. We keep hearing that they're fighting for all these good things. And the reality is the number one obstacle of those things being brought up for a vote and being rammed through Congress, next to the corporate donors that fund all the politicians, the biggest obstacle to those things being passed and implemented, at the very least being passed through the House, is Nancy Pelosi and Democratic leadership. Let's real quick have a short lesson in how to exercise power in politics, particularly in Congress. All these people have made it clear that they will not do public pressure campaigns and direct action to force Nancy Pelosi to adopt these policies, to bring these policies up on to the floor of the House for a vote. They've made it clear that they will not support a primary challenger to Nancy Pelosi to remove her from the House. They've made it clear that they won't even call out Nancy Pelosi for shitting the bed for 7 months during this entire crisis and doing nothing for the American people. So if you won't do any of those things, the only remaining option to get those policies passed through the House is to challenge these politicians in leadership races, to challenge Nancy Pelosi in a race for Speaker of the House. Or else you're just grandstanding, you're full of hot air, you're just making noise, and there is no action behind your words. You're all bark and no bite. So I'm going to get into the story a little bit more. But first, you guys already know the deal. I'm trying to make the show my full-time thing. But in order to do that, I need it to be sustainable. So if you are able to financially support the show, I have a link to my Patreon account on the About page of my YouTube channel. Also, I have, if you feel more comfortable with doing a one-time contribution, I also have a link to PayPal in the About page of my YouTube channel. And I'm also doing a partnership with a company called Mask Up, where they give me a special link, which is also in the About page of my YouTube channel. And if you click that link and go to their website and make a purchase, I get 20% commission. So no extra charge to you, just 20% of whatever your purchase is will go to me. And they sell reusable cloth masks. They're about $17. So everybody has to wear them inside anyway. So if you buy the mask, I get 20% commission. Now, back to the story. So when asked a couple weeks ago, when asked whether or not she would support Nancy Pelosi to be Speaker in the House again for the next session of Congress that starts in January, I believe. When asked about this, AOC said this, quote, "I believe that we have to see those races as they come, see what candidates they are. I am committed to making sure that we have the most progressive candidate there." And this is the most telling line. Quote, "But if Speaker Pelosi is the most progressive candidate, then I'll be supporting her." That line is telling because it signals that there is no organized effort by the, quote, elected progressives to try to get someone to challenge Nancy Pelosi from her left, someone who supports those policies and who will push those policies that they claim to support through the House. There is no organized effort behind the scenes, or else she wouldn't have said, if Pelosi is the most progressive candidate, then I'll be supporting her. Because there's no way she would be the most progressive candidate if the Justice Democrats were putting up somebody to challenge her for Speaker. There's no way that could be the case. So that's a very telling line. And the latest update in this story makes it clear to me how this whole Speaker race is going to play out. The power-hungry corporate Democrats in the House who are looking to replace Nancy Pelosi, not to change the direction of the House, but for their own personal career ambitions, like Hakeem Jeffries, They're already laying down the gauntlet. From the day after the election, there were articles in the press where they said, maybe it's time we challenge Nancy Pelosi for speaker. So this is what the power-hungry centrists are doing. And while that's happening, silence from AOC, silence from the Justice Democrats. So what that's telling me is they aren't, like I said, they aren't actually organizing and trying to figure out if they can get somebody who represents the left to challenge Nancy Pelosi for speaker. They aren't doing that, or else they would have announced it when the centrists did. If the day after the election you got nothing to lose, it's not, nobody can say, hey, you're going to cost us votes with the infighting. That excuse is gone. The votes are being counted, but they're all cast and nobody's voting it. You can't cast any more votes. So that's why the centrists came out the day after the election and laid down the line. And the fact that it's still silence from the Justice Democrats, what that tells me is they're going to let the centrist corporatists challenge Nancy Pelosi, just like they did in 2018. And then they'll throw their hands up and say, oh my goodness, looks like Nancy Pelosi's the most progressive candidate in this speaker race. I have to vote for Nancy Pelosi. And we're going to get another 2 years of Nancy Pelosi being the Speaker of the House and blocking left-wing policies. And the Justice Democrats are going to co-sign it just like they did in 2018. So I've been making this case for a while now. For all the people on the left who are still standing for AOC and Bernie Sanders and all the Justice Democrats, you're still out there caping for them and you're defending them to the hilt. This should be the final test for you, because you can't say you support Medicare for all. You can't say you think we should get a UBI. You can't say you're fighting for those things and then back Nancy Pelosi to be Speaker of the House. Those things are irreconcilable. Either you actually want those policies and at every opportunity you get to fight for those policies, you do it. And in this case, that means challenging Nancy Pelosi with somebody who will actually do those policies. Either you believe it and you're fighting for it, or you don't and you bend to the corporate Democrats. Now, this was a real test when they first got elected. The Justice Democrats first got elected in 2018. This was still a real test. Now, some will say, hey, man, they just got elected. You expect them to mount some massive challenge to Nancy Pelosi for Speaker? Yes, actually, I do. Because like I said, you're doing a hostile takeover of the Democratic Party. What better way to do it than to directly challenge them for leadership positions in the House? I thought that was a telling sign back then. Some people say, hey, man, you got to give them a chance. Give them a chance. And we all know what they did for the last 2 years in Congress. But if now, in 2020, or by the time the speaker race happens, in 2021, after Nancy Pelosi has shit the bed in such an epic fashion in response to the coronavirus, in response to the economic crisis, and she has been an obstacle to all those policies that you say will help the American people, if after all of that, if after Nancy Pelosi helped engineer and write the corporate scam, the heist, the fucking fleecing of America that was the CARES Act, the largest upward transfer of wealth in human history, giving trillions of dollars to the richest people in the country, giving trillions of dollars to corporations at a time of crisis, and giving the American people crumbs. If after that rank display of corporatism, which they all went along with and voted with, by the way, if after all of that, if after Nancy Pelosi explicitly excluded the monthly recurring payments from the CARES Act, if after all of that, you still vote for Nancy Pelosi while you don't support those policies, plain and simple. If after 8 months, the only thing that Nancy Pelosi has even suggested as far as healthcare in this country is subsidizing COBRA and private health insurance companies, if after that you still go and back her for speaker, you don't support Medicare for all. Because clearly she doesn't. Clearly, she does not support Medicare for all. We've heard the stories, even let's go for the last 2 years. We've all heard the stories. I've covered them on the show, where Nancy Pelosi's top aides, her top staffers, were meeting with private health insurance executives, assuring them, oh, please, we're not passing Medicare for all through the House. You fucking crazy? Of course we're not going to pass Medicare for all. Assuring them that Nancy Pelosi does not support Medicare for all and it will not pass her House. And then more than that, going and taking the talking points from those same private health insurance executives and lobbyists and using that to try to wrangle the Democratic politicians in the House to be against Medicare for all and to support the private health insurance industry. We see all of that. So it's clear Nancy Pelosi does not support Medicare for all. If you vote for her to be Speaker of the House, if you do not challenge her at this crucial moment where she has failed by every metric, then you are not revolutionaries. You are not doing a hostile takeover of the Democratic Party. You aren't fighting for those policies you say you're fighting for. Instead, what you are is, like I've said have been for a while now on this show, and very few people are willing to speak the truth on this. They are just career climbers, career politicians. They're comfortable in the Democratic Party. They want to climb the ladder in the Democratic Party. They'll kiss Nancy Pelosi's ass. They'll vote the way she tells them to vote on bills like the CARES Act and all the other corporate bailouts. They'll shill for Joe Biden, chief neoliberal architect, a warmonger, war criminal, architect of the Iraq War. They'll shill for him, no problem. Call Nancy Pelosi Mama Bear and pretend like she's not as shitty as she is. They'll completely ignore progressive challenges to people in leadership like Nancy Pelosi. They are just going to go along to get along. The only distinction between Justice Democrats right now and the rest of the establishment Democrats is that they don't take corporate money. Other than that, they're indistinguishable. Now, they might use a lot of the rhetoric of the left, but we need to get past that. We need to stop being so entranced by people saying words that we like that we just stop criticizing their actions. We need to just judge them by their actions. And by their actions, they are no different from the establishment Democrats. And this action here, not challenging Nancy Pelosi in the speaker's race, that tells you everything you need to know. And this gets to the point that the silly argument that people have been making to justify shilling for Joe Biden, that, AOC and Bernie, they're going to really take it to Joe Biden and they're really going to push him left. Quote, push him left. Push him left how? At the beginning of the video, I already said they're not willing to use the power of the people, do direct action. They're not willing to call out the leadership of the Democratic Party. They aren't willing to challenge them in primaries. And they aren't going to challenge them in speakers races. And they aren't going to actively try to block the shitty policies that the corporate Democrats try to push through the House. So they will use absolutely no leverage to get the policies that they say they support. So you tell me, how are they going to push Joe Biden left? The only option left is just to try to beg him to not be the shitty corporatist neoliberal that he's been for the last 50 years. The last option left is to go to Joe Biden, hat in hand, and beg him, please don't screw over the American people like you're liable to do and like we know you're going to do for your corporate donors. That's not pushing Joe Biden left. You're not willing to exercise any power. You're not willing to make Democratic leadership uncomfortable. So these people are going to be a non-factor during the Joe Biden administration. A non-factor. They will have basically no power, and not because of the numbers. That's not it. They have no power because they refuse to exercise power. They have no power because they refuse to use any leverage that they have to get their way. And so, like I said, the point I've been making, we cannot rely on them to do anything to help you. The only way that the government is going to help people in this time of crisis is if they're forced to, with direct action and public pressure campaigns. Protest in the street, protest outside their office, outside their homes, shutting down cities, shutting down business as usual, and make it so they have no choice but to deliver for the American people. Do their jobs and bail out the American people in this unprecedented crisis.